Appreciate you being here. When we, I'm on now. When we started the church, we've been on this quest to figure out exactly what church is, what God intended, what Christ intended. And so we're starting a new series today. It's Radical, and we're going to do something we've never done before. As long as I don't follow my face, we're going to put this online so that you can go to Lifewalk Church at our website, click on the messages page, and then click on the YouTube connection, and it'll take you right to the message. It'll give us a couple, 3 days to get it put up. Catherine's filming it today, videoing it. I'm taking video anyway. And Mike said I must be mighty brave trying something new and getting it on video. But trust me, I have the veto. If it doesn't work out, we'll do it next week. But anyway, I want to point out a couple things to you, and that's concerning church. If you think about church, how it's changed. You know, when I was small, when many of you were younger, church was a lot different. You had this big old box up here, and there were robes involved and stained glass and those kind of things. And there was nothing wrong with those things, but I think culture changed, times changed, people look at church different, and church is making an attempt now to be relevant, to relate to people. And you know, unfortunately, and I'm a very positive, I'm not a negative person, but I think in some ways the American church fell behind. And there are a lot of things happening, and people end up being resistant to church. And so this series that I'm going to be starting today, this called Radical, today's message is titled The Gathering. And I'll explain that as we go along, but with this movement that's been created lately, it's trying to make church relevant, trying to make church so that you sitting here, can invite your unchurched friends. Basically trying to create churches that the unchurched will love to attend. Now you say, wait a minute, you don't want to get out of hand. Surely you don't want to get out of hand. No, because there's only one gospel, and we all understand that. But people have got to hear the gospel, and there's two ways of giving people the gospel. You can either go and find them, and that's, Jesus commanded us to do that. Or you can draw them in and bring them in. And either way, they need to hear the gospel. But you know, when you look at it, you say, what's happening? Why aren't people attending church? And I think the reason is we varied from what Jesus originally intended. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. How Jesus looked at the church and what Jesus did to start something that was new and different. And that's the reason I've titled this series of messages Radical, because it really is radical. And, you know, here's the problem we have. We still hold on to things that hold us back. There are things that Jesus never intended to be carried forward into the church, because the New Testament church looks a lot different than many, many churches do. And we're still holding on to those kind of things. And that's what I want to kind of address in the message today and as we go through the series. And it's very important that you stay with me and keep coming back for the messages, because one kind of ties into the other. You know, you'll be kind of in the middle and kind of lost if you skip some things. So I want you to keep coming. And here's something else I want to challenge you to do. Most all of us here are believers. Most of us have been in church probably most of our lives. But if you've got friends who are turned off by church, who don't like church for one reason or another, something's happened and they're not in church, then this is a good series to bring them to. We should still be bringing them to church. Next slide, Susan. One more. Okay. So there we go. We're working this out, y'all. So most of the things we resist about church are things that we should resist. So the things that people are turned off by, the things that people don't like about church, is things that we should resist. Because if you look at it and think about it, the church was set up so that people were attracted to the church. And immediately after Jesus' ascension, and after he went back to heaven, things changed in such a dramatic way that the first 200-300 years, the church, the only resistance the church got was from people who didn't like the idea that Jesus was king. Because, they felt like Caesar was king and those kind of things. And so one king was enough. And yet the church still prospered in those first 200-300 years. Well, you know, if you look at church and you think about church, what is church from an outsider's point of view? What is it like on an outsider's point of view? The church is just a community of people. Just a community of people who follow the teaching of a man sent from God to explain God and to clear the path to God. Now, we understand that Jesus was more than a man. Jesus is God. Jesus was God. Jesus is God. He's part of the Holy Trinity. But to people outside, you know, that's what they should be seeing. They should be seeing that, and there should be nothing else in our life that would cause them to resist church, to resist coming. Now think about the people you know. Why don't they come to church? Have you ever heard in your lifetime, ever heard anyone say, well, you know, they believe in Jesus. And because they believe in Jesus and they follow this man and they believe he's a follower, we're not going to go to church. I don't know about you, but I've never heard anybody say that. Generally, people don't come to church. Why? Because of the people who go to church. That's a cold reality. But because of the people who go to church. And, you know, as I mentioned already, we are used to this. We love church. I love church. I love being around the people in church. But you might think to yourself, why doesn't everybody in America go to church? I love to go up in the mountains of North Carolina. And what I see up in the mountains of North Carolina, and those of you who've been, you see this all the time, they've got about every other road is something church road. Yeah. Very, very, you know, the background, the foundation is very, very, you know, very religious, very, very church oriented. So, you know, we understand that. We understand what church is about. We understand that we love church and we love being around people who go to church. I do. I love people who love the Lord. Who doesn't want their life to be better? And to be better at life. I mean, here's the way I look at my friends. You just don't understand what I know. You just don't understand what I see. And unfortunately, they've gotten the wrong idea about church. So I would say again, who doesn't want their life to be better? I'm thinking, don't you want your life to be better? Don't you want to be better at life? Here's what I know from personal experience, having observed many people going on now 6 decades. People who follow the teachings of Jesus, who follow what he... Never mind whether they believe in him or not. Because, see, we used to have a culture back in the 50s where the church and Christianity had such an influence on the culture that people lived a certain way. And people did better in their life. What I'm saying to you is, if people follow the teaching of Jesus, and they're not even believers, their life will be better. We see that. And we understand that. So here's the question. What happened? What happened to the church? How did the church, in essence, become not so relevant? How did it become resistible? You know, we've said many times here at LifeWalk that we should live our lives in a way that we attract people to Jesus. And I've said to you often over the last 2-3 months, you can't win your enemies to Christ. You can win your friends, but you can't win your enemies. So what in the world happened? Here's what happened. What Jesus originally intended, he came with something brand new, something so different than what they'd been used to. And for the first 200-300 years, the church really prospered and the church really did well. But something happened and something changed. And I'm going to introduce something to you today that I've recently learned. And this made so much sense. And I said to myself, and I think the Holy Spirit was working and he said, I got to share this. We've got to talk about this. LifeWalk Church must understand. We must understand. I must understand what church is really about. Not this picture of what you see so many times. Because in spite of everything that Jesus did, and all the changes and the things that he did away with, the things that he completed, something has happened. And I want to refer to it as the temple model. And I'm going to introduce you to the temple model this morning because basically before Jesus came, you had to go to a priest, you had to go to the temple, there had to be an intercessory between you and God. And here's what I also know. The temple model, even though it went back to the Roman Empire and way back in history and all, between you and God. As I'm going to show you as we get deeper into this series, not only is we are okay with God. Because once Jesus died and did what he did, and you're a true believer, we're okay with God. And he said there's a new ethic. And he said, after that, he said, a new commandment I give you. Love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. So what he's saying is that the true indication, what's really important is how you love each other. Now, here's what you need to understand about this. They understood. They got this. Because when Jesus was talking to them, he had done something probably most of us would never do. And if I challenge you to do this next week, you probably wouldn't show back up. It says, after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with a towel that was wrapped around him. He said, now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. And he's saying, look, it's not about rules. It's the horizontal, at this point, is a better indicator than the vertical. It's how you treat other people. He says, we can tell you're a believer if you love those who are difficult to love. Those who are hard to love. He says, now that your Lord and teacher has done this, then you do it. He said, by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples. If you love one another. If you love one another. He's saying, look, if you get to feeling like you're a big shot somewhere along the way, and you feel like because you've been with me and you're a disciple and there are people at your feet looking up at you teaching, he said, just remember that I washed your feet. And he said, if you get this attitude, you've got a bad attitude about life and about being a leader and you're all that, he said, you just need to wash more feet. Jesus literally took the leadership paradigm and he turned it upside down. He said, the greatest in my kingdom will serve them all. So he said, anytime you down the road you think you're, and that applies to all of us, you think you're somebody, you need to begin to wash more feet. And like I said, I believe if I said next week we're going to have a foot washing service, unfortunately many of you wouldn't come. Now look, not only did Jesus do these things, but he did something now that was unimaginable. Absolutely unimaginable. Jesus gave new meaning to the Passover. Now you got to understand this. I mean, this is radical. We think about this, but Moses was the guy who had saved them. When they did the Passover, the bread they took was the bread they ate the night they were ready to rush out of Egypt. You remember the story. God had spared them from the death angel. And Moses had saved everybody. And Jesus hadn't delivered anybody. He hadn't saved anybody yet. But we know that he did and that he would. And so it says that he took the bread and gave thanks and broke it and gave it to them, saying, this is my body. My body. My body which is given for you. My body which is given to everyone. Anyone who accepts Christ. My body is sacrificed for you. My body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. And these guys sitting around the table were kind of like freaking out. What is he saying? You're trying to replace Moses? Moses saved us. You haven't done anything. Who do you think you are? Do this in remembrance of me. Here's what you might think. Let's say tomorrow on the newspaper, social media, on the radio, everywhere, we got word from the Billy Graham Association. This is the best way I could put it in context. And Billy Graham has been famous for all these years and led so many people to Christ and done all this great work. We all know him and respect him. And word was sent out, Dr. Graham is near death now. And we all know he's, 98 years old. And he said, you know what? From now on Christmas, we're going to, in remembrance, think of Billy Graham. I mean, it's shocking to even think about it. You go, come on, Billy. Come on, Franklin, whoever put this out. Come on, he's a great guy. He's done a lot of things. But he's not Jesus. And you see, that's kind of the way these guys looked at it. Here's Jesus saying, I'm going to replace Moses. This is so radical. This is the holiest of holy holidays for them. He said, from now on, you do this in remembrance of me. In remembrance of me. Now, the arrival of Jesus signaled the end of the temple model and the beginning of something entirely new. What Jesus basically said was, you can take all the law and all the commandments and you can boil it down to one word, one verb, one commandment, applied 3 ways. Now follow me, this is so important because I believe this is what's lacking in the church. Jesus said this, love God, love your neighbor, and love your enemy. Now think how your life would be different. Think of how this world would be different. Think of how everything that you know would be different if we followed that one thing. He said, look, there's 600 and some laws that they've got together going. He says, it doesn't even take 10 commandments. Just one commandment. He said, this is radically brand new, something different, something you've never seen before. Moving forward, just one law, just one rule. Love God, love your neighbor, and love your enemy. Now look, that last part's hard. That last part's different. He's saying, love those who don't talk like you. Love those that are difficult. Love those who don't look like you. Love those who don't have the same gender identity as you. Love those who are different color, different religious background. Love God. Love your neighbor. And love your enemy. And you see, that's simple, but it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not simplistic. And so as we move forward, what I want to talk about as we go through the weeks, and I want to show you this, the temple model has crept back into the church. And there are all kinds of things that are happening. See, it's not what we're doing. It's the things. It's not the old things. It's the old things that are being brought back in. Without meaning to, you can take the modern church with the lights and the darkened rooms and the fog machines, and you go into the kids areas and they're like Disney World. You say, why are they doing all that? They're trying to be relevant, and a lot of them are doing a great job. And there's a movement around the country, and it's happening. But still, there are things that we hold on to from the temple model. And you won't understand them. And we can't straighten it out. We can't straighten it out in Lifelong Church unless you come next week and come to the rest of the series. I'm serious. This builds on itself. And it's going to amaze you some of the things that are happening in the church that Jesus never intended for it to happen. And so as we go through, that's what I want to do. And I'll remind you that you can go to the website. And if everything works out, I'm not sure we'll put this one on. We got such a rough start. But we're eventually going to get these things put up so you can go and review them. But here's the important thing. If you've got friends who really don't like church, they may not even know why. You may not know why. I think this series will be very enlightening to them. Let's have prayer. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for each person that's here. God, I just pray that you are honored, that you will be honored, and that all things that we do through Lifelong will be under the one rule, the one law, the one command that you gave us. Lord, that people will know Lifelong Church as a church that sincerely, genuinely, not only loves each other, but God, we love everybody that you love. And Lord, that we will give everybody a chance to come into your family and be a part of your kingdom. I pray this in Jesus' name.